Hi everyone, my name is Dan Fullerton. I'm a physics teacher at Irondequoit High School in Rochester, New York, and I also built the aplusphysics.com website. I'm here to talk to you today about developing a successful flipped classroom. So let's start by talking about what a flipped classroom is. Well, when we think about it, a flipped classroom isn't about videos, despite the fact that that tends to get the most press. Really, what it's about is the delivery of rote instruction outside the classroom, leaving you more time in the classroom for those hands-on, active learning and group problem-solving activities. When you implement the flipped classroom, you have more time for inquiry and exploration, for projects that students are going to remember for years and years. More time for problem solving, going deeper into problems, more challenging problems, and providing help for students, working with them as they do the problems as opposed to sending them home to do problems and getting stuck and giving up. More time for discussion and debate in class and those deeper dives into topics of interest. But what the flipped classroom is not, despite what you oftentimes hear, it's not learning by video. Things like just purely Khan Academy or some of the charter schools or online courses. That's not what it's about. It's about having that extra time in the classroom to do those things that you just can't do if an instructor's not there. I'd like to show a quote here from Frank Noscasi. It says, Sal Khan is not showing what students are doing beyond Khan Academy, the open-ended problems the kids should be engaging with after mastering the basics. The focus is on the wrong things. Khan Academy is just one tool in a teacher's arsenal. If it's the only tool, that's a huge problem, and I think he says it very well there. Videos, regardless of who makes them, are not the answer. It's a tool. It's an extra way to give the kids a head start outside of the classroom with the whole point of having more time inside the classroom to do these active learning projects. That's what the focus really needs to be on. Not saying anything wrong about Khan Academy or other video sources, but it's not about the videos. It's about the extra time in class for active learning. Another question comes up quite often, are teachers unnecessary? Well, no, it's not a teacher replacement. It's not a teacher vacation. If you do it right, you're probably more involved with the students on a day-to-day basis. You get to talk to just about every student every day. You get to see where they're struggling, where they're succeeding. And you have time to build more relationships too, to help pull more of that student interest in the class. So really, if you do it right, it's not a vacation where you sit back and just let the kids watch. It's about those active learning activities and then getting more involved with your kids. It's also not one of these massive online courses you hear about. I've taught online courses through a university before, and the flipped classroom model is very different from a completely online course. Again, the whole point of a flipped classroom is to give you more active learning time in the classroom time itself when you are there to assist the kids one-on-one or in small groups. It's also not a magic bullet. This isn't going to fix every single problem you have in your classroom. The same problems you've had are still going to exist. How do you motivate students? How do you help students who are struggling in different areas? This doesn't fix those problems. What it does is gives you better insight into the problems and the struggles of your students, and then give you an avenue maybe to have a little bit more time to work with them on these issues. It's also not the same in every classroom. You don't have to implement it the way I do. Someone else doesn't have to implement it the way they read in the book. Tons of ways to implement it. You can flip part of your classroom, the whole classroom. You can do one lesson. You can do weeks of lessons. You can have one student doing it. You can have all your students doing it or some mix. There are tons of different ways to do this, and there's no one right answer. Find what works for you and fits in with your own personal teaching style. Now, the flipped classroom is student-centered. Absolutely. It's about the students taking ownership for their learning. It's standards-based. If you set up your videos and your lessons around specific learning tasks, learning standards, objectives you want the students to be able to complete, you will have a very, very well-organized class. It's very easy to differentiate. You can have students working on very different parts of the course depending on their current needs. It's flexible. It's teacher-driven. It's empowering. It gives the students control over their own learning. It allows you to build independent learning skills in your students. And it's research-based. Now, benefits of flipping. Students get to work at their own pace. Now, of course, there are limits to that. You can't have Unit 1 take the entire year. But if a student's struggling in a certain area, there are opportunities to allow them to continue working in that. Or if they're really good at something, they've mastered it already, no reason they can't move on to the next item. Students use what works best for them, whether it's videos, whether it's books, whether it's lessons. You have the opportunity to differentiate by learning style. It allows experts into the classroom. I'm a physics teacher. I can have Albert Einstein lecture my class. It allows the instructor to be their best. Many of you know some days aren't as strong as others, or you may have gone through a lesson, and if you do it with multiple classes, by the second or third time you've done it, partway through the lesson, you may have forgotten what exactly you covered and what's left to cover. Well, if you have all of this summarized in a short video lesson, you don't have to worry so much about all of those little details. If you miss a finer point, it's covered in the video. It leaves you a lot more freedom to go into the topics that the students are interested in without worrying about, did I hit every single little key point? It also allows on-demand lessons for absentees, and that's what got me started doing this. I got so frustrated with students coming in, and we'd have 1 or 2 students absent every day, and I ended up spending the next day reteaching the same lesson every single day, wasted 45 minutes to an hour every day reteaching what I did the day before. Well, now you have a place for students who are absent to at least get started, to get the basics of what you did in class the previous day, so that they can come in and at least catch up a whole lot more quickly than if they didn't have any idea what you'd done the day before. It decreases catch-up time for students who are out for extended periods or who have fallen behind. It's a great review tool when it comes time for final exams, things like that, standardized tests. Now you have a tool that you can use and allow students to differentiate by topic where they need the most help. It's a great option for students, and the instructors get to see student hang-ups quite regularly as I walk around my classroom as the students are working on different projects and activities. I get a very good feel for where they are individually and as a class. If the entire class is struggling in a certain area, I can stop the class, we can redo it again and again. If I see 1 or 2 students struggling, I can do it right then, stop, and work with them on that specific activity or objective or standard, and try and help them get up to speed on that without stopping the rest of the class. So it really gives you great insight into how the class is doing, both as a whole and individual students. You have a lot more one-on-one time with the students. Now, I find, depending on the level of my classes, that the more independent kids oftentimes don't need that extra one-on-one time. They'd rather keep working on things independently. But that's their option. As you want and as they want to, you have the ability in a flipped classroom to spend a lot more time with them, to check in to see how they're doing personally as well as how they're doing academically and how they're doing on the current topic in the class. A lot more time for small group activities that tend to be very fun, engaging, pull the kids together to make their own meaning. More active learning, frequent small formative assessments. Oftentimes, I don't really need to give a unit test. I do it more for practice than to see where my kids are. By just walking around and seeing what they're doing every day, I can tell where they're struggling, where they're strong, and the test more becomes an exercise, a practice for them to try and pull it all together than it is anything having to do with the summative assessment. It's also very compatible with mastery learning. You can have students continue working on something until they master it. And if they don't have it yet, maybe they go back and they watch the video again, they do some more problems, they come work with you, and you try it again and again and again. And they really get control of their learning, ownership of their learning by doing this cycle. So I sent out a survey to a bunch of teachers who are doing flipped classroom. I sent out a bunch of emails to teachers. I gave some Twitter notifications to the survey and also posted in a Facebook forum for Upstate New York Flipped Forum asking for responses to a number of questions. And I thought I'd share a quick summary of what teachers mentioned who were flipping their classroom at various levels. So the first thing is we took a look at where teachers spent their time in their class from before they flipped their classroom until after they flipped their classroom. And you can see we have a big change here. Pre-flip, a majority of time is spent in teacher-centric activities, probably direct instruction or something similar. After flipping, this has come down to well under 25%. You see a growth in student-centric activities here in green, a growth in small group activities, and a growth in problem-solving activities as far as classroom time allotments. These are the items, the Small group activities, the problem solving, the student-centric work, where having the teacher there right beside them is so much more beneficial. So what we're doing is we're reallocating our time so that you have the teachers beside the students for the most teacher-intensive portions of the class. Some other survey responses, looking at the benefits of flipping the classroom, some of the common answers. Well, we saw things like more time for activities, more time for working with students in small groups, the chance to talk with students every day, greater insight into student performance and hang-ups, and efficiency in the classroom, how quickly you could cover material, as well as the opportunity to use that extra time in order to dive into topics that students were interested in, really making the learning about them. And isn't that what makes the classroom so much fun? Some of the drawbacks that were mentioned repeatedly. Students not completing out-of-class work. And like we said, the flipped classroom isn't a magic bullet. If the students aren't doing homework beforehand and they're not watching the videos when you flip your classroom, well, you've still got that problem. This doesn't fix everything. And we'll talk about a couple ideas for maybe working toward that. But it's not going to solve the problem. Students have to do the work to learn things. You don't just soak it in by osmosis, as we all know. Sometimes parents and students resist change. It's quite a change in philosophy. Doing the homework in class as opposed to problems at night is very different than the standard model that many students and parents are used to. However, if you think about it, haven't we been doing this in literature classes for years and years? Go home, read the book, come back into the class, and we'll discuss it and explore it and write about it and go into those deeper levels of literature exploration and analysis. So it's really not new, it's just they oftentimes haven't seen it in some of the other classrooms where you're starting to see it implemented more and more, such as science, technology, math, engineering type courses. You have to teach your kids to learn independently. The first couple weeks of my classroom are sometimes rather awkward, and there's a lot of teaching about how to learn, helping the students build independence, giving them the skills, working with them to develop those skills, I should say, that'll allow them to learn independently as they move forward. So there is a lot of upfront teaching to help the kids learn the system and how to use these effectively. Getting to understand that you can't just stare at a screen when you go home for 10 minutes and expect that you're going to learn anything. Understanding that you have to actively engage with the videos, take notes, do problems, put your phone and the TV and everything else well away from you, and actively engage with the material. And that takes a little bit of training. So teaching kids to learn from videos and to learn independently. And also, there is, of course, a time commitment to make and or curate the videos if you're using other people's videos. And I will absolutely say, when you get started, sometimes the task of making these videos can seem monumental. Oftentimes, it can take you many, many hours to get through your first couple videos as you start to develop a workflow. But if you stick with it for a while, after you've gotten the system down, you really get to focus on the pedagogy. You get to focus on the content and how you're going to deliver it. And you worry less and less about the technology of making the videos, and you can really streamline your process. But up front, it is a time commitment, and the first few are pretty tough to get your hands around because they take so much time as you get started. It does get better if you stick with it, though. Some other responses from the survey. Opportunities, where folks wanted to learn more or improve. Well, how to make videos was number one. Not only making videos, but how to make better videos came up quite often. How to make them more efficiently. Advanced video creation workflows. How to add other little details, how to add problems and pauses and speed things up. As you get more and more comfortable with the technology, more and more things you can do to spice up your videos, to spice up the lessons, or to add benefits for the students. Maybe an example where you've gone out in the real world and you want to include a video clip and analyze that actual video clip. Something like what we're going to see here in a little bit. Can be very, very valuable. Flipped class assessment practices. How do you assess in a flipped classroom? How do you hold kids accountable for watching the videos? There are lots of different strategies and ways to do that, but it's definitely an area of interest in our survey respondents. Learning how others flip their classroom, the methodologies, the techniques, what their classroom looks like, of high interest. And looking at other online resources, whether they're free or paid resources. Are there other sources of videos that could help in the classroom? Some general themes from the survey, too, while we're here. Number one came up again and again. The big benefit, more time with students. Of course, the drawback, preparation and planning costs. And that's not talking just monetarily, that's talking time. And the challenges and opportunities, making the videos and teaching students to learn independently. So strong areas of focus, areas where the flipped teaching community is looking for more help. So I wanted to talk for a minute about one of my lessons. Electric potential is one of the areas as a physics teacher where my students tend to struggle. It's such a nebulous concept. So before I flipped my classroom, I would start with a lecture discussion, talk about what electric potential is, voltage, explain it in the context of circuits. Then do a little bit of problem solving, where I'd start out doing it as a whole class where I would demonstrate it. Then I would have the students do it with me. Then I'd have the students do it in small groups. And finally move toward them doing it independently. So going through a progression, building more and more independence. Usually I'd follow this up with some sort of lab activity, a hands-on chance to see potential demonstrated, followed by maybe a computer simulation, and then a review of the material before we moved on and applied it or took it to the next step. And it was semi-successful at best. It's such a difficult concept. Once I flipped the classroom, though, I found this is one of my lessons that got much, much, much stronger. First off, I would start the kids with a homework assignment to watch a short video on electric potential. Didn't expect them to learn everything from the video, but at least be familiar with the vocabulary, perhaps have a little bit of background into what we were going to be doing next. It gave them a head start, so it wasn't the first time they'd seen all this. Then we went into a 3D modeling activity. We would take what we knew from circuits and we would use pipe cleaners and build models around those circuits using what we knew about electric potential. And that was a great chance for the kids to start to build their own meaning about electric potential, where I would just wander around and guide and perhaps answer a couple questions, do a couple mini demonstrations, but really let the kids figure out what potential really was. We'd integrate the problem solving into that activity. To complete their models, they had to solve problems using electric potential. We followed this up again with a computer simulation. The students seemed to like that, and that's a great way to pull things together neatly. And finally, we would do some small group clicker review with whiteboards, where the students would share their answers with each other, talk about what's right and what's wrong, and I found I had much, much, much better success with electric potential. So how has flipping influenced my teaching specifically? Well, it's really allowed me to focus on learning activities as opposed to lecture preparation. Now when I start to plan a unit, I look at where I want to be and what I want the kids to be able to do. And instead of figuring out how I'm going to present different material, I worry about what activities I can get the kids involved in that will allow them to develop these skills and understandings themselves. And that's a whole lot more fun for me and the students. It also gives me a much better view into student knowledge, where they're good, where they're struggling, and trying to figure out ways to meet those gaps. I can walk around in a classroom now as I'm doing the flipped classroom model and see where they're struggling, and oftentimes I can stop the class if we have a whole problem right there, address it immediately, and then keep going on in the classroom. Get that much insight as opposed to waiting a day or two or getting a summative assessment and saying, oh my goodness, my students really don't know this topic. I've got to go back and spend a few days. Well, no, I can really hit it real time now, or close to real time. Since we've done this, the physics enrollment in our school has nearly doubled. This probably isn't the only thing that's helped increase enrollment in physics, but making the class much more active in the classroom. Students enjoy coming to class. We see smiles and giggling and laughing, and there's lots of time for them to interact with each other socially as well. Just has really made the classroom a whole lot more fun, and that has you can see that in our enrollment numbers. Our mastery scores have increased. Our level of 4s and 5s on AP exams and Regents physics scores greater than 85% have gone up. Now our overall passing average has remained pretty constant, but understand also that our enrollment has gone way up. And typically the strongest performing students are the ones who have been taking physics. So really what we're doing is we're taking that top level and we're getting more and more students who typically wouldn't be scoring as high. So maintaining the same passing rate and increasing mastery as we're increasing enrollment is quite an achievement, I think, and speaks to the student interest in this model of learning. So then, how do you flip your classroom? Tons of ways to do it, but just a couple hints and a couple things that might get you started for those who are new to this. Number one, I'd highly recommend you start small. You don't have to go flip your entire class, make a video for every single topic you cover on day one. Nothing says you can't do a single lesson, a single day, or take a unit, a week's worth of material, and try flipping it and see how it goes. Try some things, see what works, see what doesn't, get some student feedback, and come back to it. You don't have to do the whole thing at once. What do you need in order to make the videos? Well, you probably have that equipment already. Basically, a computer and a webcam, and you can get started. Sometimes even simpler, sometimes you might want more technical hardware, but that's enough to get you started in most cases. It's also compatible with modeling curricula, with mastery learning, and with standards-based grading. So if you're running one of these other systems as well, doesn't mean you've got to throw everything else away. Flipped Classroom works great with these. I use them all in my classroom. So, pathways to flipping. It doesn't look the same in every classroom. You could have a pathway where in class you explore a topic first, then you flip the class, meaning the students watch the videos, then they come in and apply what they've learned. Or you could explore first, have students apply what they learned from their exploration, and then use the flip as a sort of summative exercise to make sure that they've got all the key points and it kind of pulls it all together for them in a nice, neat fashion. You could start out with the video. You could flip first. Do that as an introduction. Apply the concepts in class. And then have the students go a little bit further, taking what they've already applied and extending it on their own. Or start off with the video, then have the students go explore some sort of inquiry-based lab activity perhaps, and then apply it to standardized problems or deeper dive problems and see how they can do there. So lots of different models for this. Another way you could look at doing this has to do with using videos for analysis. Peter Pohachek has done this with direct measurement video in physics. Lots of things you can't demonstrate in the classroom every day, but you could take a video of it and use that and have the students analyze that video. One of the most popular ones he has is of a looping roller coaster. You watch the roller coaster, and in the video you watch what it does. It goes through a loop-de-loop, and you analyze what's going on to help understand the physics principles, to actually see, measure, and prove those concepts you've been studying. So another great way to use videos. As well, some helpful hints. In your videos, try and focus on a single standard or objective, keeping the video short. 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes is a maximum. Short lessons, lots of examples. The students like to see example problems. Plan out those videos in advance. As much as it might seem like a simple topic and you just want to dive in, I've found time and time again that things go so much more smoothly if I take the time to plan everything out first and take the video once, as opposed to doing it wrong 4 or 5 times, wishing I had planned it out. Try and focus on teaching, not the technology, and that can be a little difficult the first time or two through the process. Try and focus on the teaching, the pedagogy, not the technology, and that gets easier the more you do it. Finally, I recommend using your image in the video. Some folks don't like to do that. It's not absolutely necessary, but I hear from so many students across the world that they feel like they built a relationship up with me by having my face in the video, talking to them. And I believe that that helps the students build that relationship inside and outside the classroom. So if you can, and you're comfortable with it, I definitely recommend trying to keep your face in the video in some way. It just makes it a little bit more human, a little bit more friendly. Now, some potential issues with flipping the classroom. Here be dragons, absolutely. Number one, a lot of teachers are worried about how much they have to bite off, that they've got to do an entire class at once. And here we're going to go to the old saying about how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I don't really recommend eating any elephants, but you don't have to flip the entire year at once. Try one lesson. If you're not comfortable making a video, try somebody else's video as a homework assignment, as an introduction to the next topic, and just see what happens and what the kids say. You don't have to start in a big way. Lots of different resources available that'll help you get started, and you can do it one little bite at a time. Also, it's okay to use the lessons of others. The flipped teachers enjoy being part of a learning community, and many teachers have put their videos up in various places for other folks to use. Socratic.org is one website where lots of teachers have posted videos on various topics in chemistry, physics, biology, calculus, and pre-calc. Go take a look at some of those videos to get some ideas, or maybe assign your students one of those videos from another teacher. Sometimes it's helpful to get material from a different perspective. YouTube has an edu channel, an education channel, where it has already gone through and looked at different teachers who are making videos and added their specific videos to these channels. Lots of times, schools that block YouTube will allow the educational channel through too. So if you don't have access to YouTube as a whole, perhaps you might have access to the YouTube edu channel. And lots of different things you can find related to high school courses there. And on the paid side, there is educator.com, where this company in California has hired teachers from across the country, brought them in to record specific courses, most all of the AP courses, as well as software learning and basic courses in math, and tried to give you the best of the best. And although individual subscriptions tend to be fairly expensive, they offer a fairly competitive district or classroom-wide rate that you could look at online if you were interested. So, and there are tons of other resources beyond those as well, and I'll be distributing some of those in the live presentations. Also, try and avoid lecture. Just lecturing like you would in the classroom is going to be too long and too slow. Understand that the students who are watching the videos have a fast forward and a pause button and a rewind button. If they don't get something, they can go back. So don't be afraid to just hit the main items and keep moving. Try and avoid lecture. Try and make it as interactive, as fun as you can. Smile. Be goofy every now and then. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Smile, a big one. It's very easy to become so focused on what you're doing, the technical aspects, the teaching aspects, that you're so focused that you really don't smile much. It becomes stressful, and your audience can pick up on that. When I was out I worked at educator.com a couple summers ago working on a physics lesson. And when I would come in, I was out there, my only job was to make videos. If I shot 3 to 4 hours of videos in the studio in a day, that was considered being quite a trooper. Just because of all the prep work, all the stress, you really need to be fresh, you need to be relaxed, and not focusing on the technology aspect, instead trying to have fun as you teach, because it'll show through in your videos. So try and smile, try and relax, try and keep it fun. It's okay to make mistakes as you do this. The kids will enjoy it, and oftentimes they learn as much from your mistakes as they do from the things you do correctly. Variety. Try not to do the same thing every time. I've heard so many times from folks watching my videos on YouTube that I open my videos up the same way every time. Hi folks, I'm Dan Fullerton. Welcome to da-da-da-da-da. Well, that gets boring. One video, I think I said something real funky, real goofy, like, howdy y'all, great to see ya. And they went nuts with responses. How neat that was that it just caught them off guard. Something as silly, goofy, and simple as that. If that makes a difference, think what can happen if you just try and keep rearranging things. Throw something funky in your slides every now and then. I know a teacher in Syracuse who does a great job with his flipped classroom models, who has a short Katy Perry song at the end of all of his videos, or hides a pineapple in different places in his videos. Do something to keep the students guessing. The big question, what if the students don't watch the videos? Well, if the students aren't doing the classwork that's required, no matter what model you use, things aren't going to go well. Education is an active sport. You've got to be actively engaged. But there are a couple things I've found in my classroom help. When I flip my classroom, I have a discussion with the students about our choices. We can have a standard traditional classroom where we'll do lectures and labs and activities and stuff in class, and you'll be sent home to do homework of 15 to 20 minutes several times per week at home. Or instead, we can have you guys watch videos of 10, 15 minutes a couple times a week at home. And you can do your homework, the problems, in the classroom where I'm there to help if you get stuck. Pretty much they always decide they want to watch the videos at home. Plus, it's neat to be able to do those on their phones or while they're on the bus. Just gives them a lot more freedom and independence. And at some point during the year, of course, things start to get a little old, a little slow, usually around January, February. They say, let's try something different. So we take a week. We'll go back to the traditional model. Just about 1 week, and they want to go back to the flipped classroom model. Or for the few students who aren't doing the videos at night, you can have the classroom discussion that you really need everybody on board, that you need to stay up to speed with these videos. If you're not doing the videos at home at night, we've got to go back to doing the homework at night and making sure you guys get that instruction in the classroom. And it's amazing what peer pressure will do to help bring other students who aren't watching the videos in line. So you do have to worry about things like access to videos and who has access to these different things outside of school hours. And there are lots of ways around that I don't want to go into too much detail here. But things to think about, making sure all students have access so that they can do their homework appropriately. Yeah, I think that covers that. Finally, don't reteach. If the students come in and say, we didn't watch the video, we don't know what we're doing, the worst thing you can do in a flipped classroom model is say, all right, well, we're going to go over it again. Let's take 10, 15 minutes and teach what they should have seen in the video. If you do that, every student who did do the homework, who did watch the video at home, is going to be turned off and realize they don't have to do their homework. And very soon, nobody will be watching the videos, and you're just wasting all of that time. So I highly recommend not reteaching. If the students don't watch the videos, they've got to go figure it out on their own time, or send them out of the room, or to the back of the room, or somewhere where they have access to them while the rest of the class is continuing forward. But don't take entire class time to reteach topics for students who should have watched these at home. Also, we should make a note about copyright, fair use, and ownership. It's very easy as teachers to want to use the best of the best material out there. You do need to be careful, though, and respect copyrights and trademarks and the fair use laws. You can't just take other people's material and put it on the web. You can't take somebody else's worksheets and put them on your page, your web page, and say, okay, these are publicly available for students to use. That's illegal. If somebody else made it, you need their permission in order to use it on their web page. If you're making videos, you need to be very careful that they are original content. You can't take problems from books, copy those problems directly in, and use them as your own videos. So just things to be careful of. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to give legal advice. If you're worried about that, definitely go talk to a lawyer first. But be very careful. Anything you put on the internet is considering you publishing it. So as much as we worry about students and plagiarism and copyright, even if it's not intentional, we need to be very careful not to do the same things. So the nitty-gritty. Let's talk a little bit about software and hardware to make the videos. The Cadillac for educational screencasting software, to my mind, is TechSmith products. They have Camtasia for the PC, Camtasia Studio, I believe they call it, and Camtasia Mac for the OS X, the Macintosh platform. And these are fairly detailed video processing software solutions that have lots of bells and whistles, but are also fairly simple to get started with. They're a little bit expensive, but they're a great investment, I think, especially if you want to work on the educational side of making flipped classroom videos. Their support is tremendous. If you call them, you usually talk to a human being right away. And their email support and forum support, top-notch. They really get teachers. Their products, they have a free one called Jing that allows you to just make a 5-minute video screen capture only. They have Coach's Eye for iOS and Android that allows you to record and annotate video and share. Snagit, which you can find for $30 for an academic price, gives you still and video screen capture. But the real products for those who are getting more deeply into flipped classroom work are Camtasia Studio for the PC and Camtasia for Mac. I've used both of these for several years on both platforms. You do pay more for the PC version. I think it has considerably more features and is more streamlined than the Mac version. But both are very good. Both have great support. Sometimes you can find online coupons for prices below the academic price. And they offer 30-day free trials. So that's a great place to start. And you're really not going to go wrong with those, especially if your school district already has a license. But there are also some alternatives that are very good as well. As an example, Screencast-O-Matic is free, which allows you to make up to 15-minute videos for Mac and PC. It's a great place to start if you're not sure how deeply you want to get into this screencasting flipped classroom work. The Pro version is $15 per year, and it offers you longer videos and some storage and things like that. Adobe Presenter 10 integrates with PowerPoint and is fairly popular for the PC and Mac, but for that amount of money, if you're really getting into flipped classroom, I'd probably go the TechSmith Camtasia route. ScreenFlow 5 for Mac for $99 is the Mac competitor to TechSmith Camtasia. I have both on my computer. I use them in different circumstances. They're both very good. Adobe Premiere for PC and Mac is video editing software. It's pretty expensive, tons of bells and whistles, but it's a professional level video editing suite for when you want to get considerably more complex. And on the Mac side of that, you have Adobe Premiere as well, or the Mac specific one from Apple is Final Cut Pro, which I've also used all of these different packages, and both are good, but Premiere, Final Cut Pro, several $100s. And definitely more complex, higher learning curve. So that's probably as you're getting into the deeper levels and want a lot more bells and whistles in your video production. As far as input devices, just about any USB webcam will work with these software packages, and oftentimes these are even built into laptops and some desktop computers now. For a microphone, just about any USB microphone will work as well. If at all possible, if you've got a built-in webcam, try and avoid using the microphone that's built in. Usually those aren't of the highest quality, but they may get you started. Instead, a little lapel mic that runs to your USB port oftentimes will do a much better job for about $15. Or at the higher end, I'm a big fan of the Blue Yeti USB microphone. It's about $100. That's the one I'm using right now. Has very clear sound, and it's actually better than the lapel mic that I have that goes right into my video camera. As far as input, if you'll notice on lots of my videos, I write directly on the screen. There are different ways to do that. Most of the products that are most popular come from Wacom. They have bamboo digitizers for about $50 to $200. Basically what they are is a little tablet, looks kind of like an iPad, but it's not a screen. You just write on it with a stylus, and it acts like a mouse on your computer, so you can write with that. The trick is you're writing on one surface and you're seeing what shows up on another surface, and sometimes that takes a little bit of getting used to. I tried it for quite a while, and my handwriting's bad enough to begin with that when I did this, it wasn't very legible, and I practiced, and I ended up focusing more on writing than the teaching. So eventually I changed and started using a Wacom Cintiq or interactive pen display. Now those tend to be a bit more expensive. They start at about $1,000. I think they have one maybe $800 now for a smaller screen. But it's basically a monitor that you write on like an iPad and acts as a monitor, and you can record all that as well. That works much better, but a much bigger investment. And in between the two, Wacom also has Intuos digitizers. Those are like the bamboo digitizers. They're just bigger and more targeted toward professional artists, things like that. So, great place to start, a little $50 Wacom bamboo. Some are wired, some are wireless. Oftentimes you can find deals on the internet where they're fairly cheap. At the high end, $1,000 and up, come the Cintiq and interactive pen displays, where it's a monitor you actually write on. And of course, you could even just use your mouse and use that to write on the screen over PowerPoint or something else. That'll work too, even if it's a little bit awkward. Certainly reasonable for getting started. What do you do once you've made the videos? Well, you want to host them somewhere where students have access to them. So YouTube is one place to do that. It's free. They have YouTube Edu if you can get approved on the education channel. That gives even better access. And they tend to give teachers longer video access. Once you've been doing it for a while, they'll see that you've got a bunch of educational videos and bump you up to an account that gives you access to videos longer than 15 minutes. So it's a great place to put your videos. They are open to the world, but you have tons of bandwidth. You don't have to worry about video size or storage, and it's free. A great place to start. Now, because some schools block YouTube, I also recommend having your videos somewhere else as well. If you're using TechSmith products, Screencast.com is one place to go. They offer 2 gigabytes of storage and bandwidth for free each month. And for a professional account for $10 a month, you get more storage and more bandwidth. But you could certainly start on the free side there, and that's another avenue for students to get access to your videos. You can host it yourself, making your own website. Oftentimes you can do that fairly cheaply, or your local BOCES or teacher support center may have plans already in place to host these different things. So another way to do that, talk to your local IT folks and see if they have any recommendations or even something already in place. So, some student reflections, things I've heard over the years. I got a bad flu and was out for 2 weeks. The notes and videos saved me from certain failure. Wow. Very powerful. What I didn't learn in class for weeks, I learned here in 12 minutes. All right, that's a little troubling. Thankfully, it wasn't specifically from my student. That was from someone else who had seen my video on YouTube. But oftentimes, just getting a lesson from a different perspective, from a different instructor, can make all the difference. The videos are extremely helpful and fantastic for review. Perfect for studying for my final. So, and there are tons of different things like this. And you have lots of places you can go for support. Lots of flipped classroom forums. A little Google search will take you a long way. Or if you need more help, I actually love doing this stuff. Please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help any way I can. But for more information, more help, you can always find me on aplusphysics.com or any of the other avenues. I'll pass out some information in the live presentations as well. So good luck. Thank you so much for your time, and make it a great day.